Good morning to everybody. Happy Sunday. It's Daryl here. It's about 8 a.m. here in Connecticut on the East Coast. I just got back in from my bike ride. I was out for about an hour. I did about a 10-mile bike ride. And while I was on it, I was thinking about the Alec Baldwin situation. Right now, everybody that's watching this probably knows the situation, what happened a few days ago. Alec Baldwin was on the set of a movie, the movie Rust. Now, this movie, I was trying to check. It sounds like it was set in the late 1800s, maybe the early 1900s, that time period. And that's going to become important in a second. One person was hurt fatally, and another person was wounded on the set when a prop gun, which was supposedly a cold gun, as they're called, meaning they had blanks, should not be able to fire. There should be, no live rounds on the set of a movie. There's no reason to have live rounds on the set of a movie. So this was bothering me. This has been on my mind, and I've come up with a possible scenario. Now, you guys, you got to remember here. Look, this is just an idea that I have, because it really bothered me. It doesn't make any sense. A lot of people, it sounds like the only thing. I'm not a conspiracy theorist, but I could see how people were going to start saying, well, there must have been some kind of hokey finokey going on here. Because there's, logically, look, I have no experience with movies. I grew up with guns. My father actually used to pack his own bullets. He had a lead melter, scales, and everything like that. And up in the attic, back when I was real young, 3, 4, 5 years old, I remember. Okay, so this has been bothering me because, logically you're thinking there should not, why would there possibly be an actual live round on the set? It doesn't make any sense, but I came up with an idea here. Stick with me now. I could be completely wrong and talking out my backside, but I've got a theory here. All right, the thing that made me think was what happened on the set. Alec Baldwin was handed this weapon. Let's go over what we know. And he fired it, thinking that it was a cold gun, that there was no projectile. There was, and a woman who I don't know if she worked on the film or I think she was the head of lighting, I believe. And she was hit around the collarbone. And then this is what I'm really pondering here. The person behind her was hit too. So logically, you're thinking that the projectile went in and out the woman and then hit the man behind her. That's what it sounds like happened. So I'm thinking here, a blank shouldn't have this kind of, okay, I did some drawing here. Let's go. Let's look this over. And keep in mind, I was in a hurry here. This is a revolver. Now, this is probably what was being used on the set. If you look down the barrel here, if you're looking head right into the gun, down the barrel, you'll see the heads of the bullets. It's got the round chamber that revolves. Is called a revolver. Now, this one over here, this is called a semi-automatic. It's got a clip. Now, those weren't invented back in this time, so that's not what we're talking about here. So I came up with some ideas here. Now, let's talk about bullets first of all. A bullet, I think it's basically comprised of 3 pieces. The projectile that comes out, a piece of lead. Okay, that's right here. The shell or the brass, the casing that holds the little dots or the powder. And this is called the primer. It's like the fuse for a firework. It sets off a little, the hammer hits it, it sets off a little explosion, which sets off the gunpowder, which pushes the projectile out. Now, a blank wouldn't have this projectile. It would just have wadding and the gunpowder. So this is what bothered me, is there's no way that, how could this, supposedly it can happen, that this wadding can get enough velocity and come out and hurt somebody, but could it actually go through a woman and hit a man behind her? I just don't see how that could happen. This wadding is made of paper or plastic. But then I started thinking about what they would need on the set. You would need blanks that sound and act like bullets. But then, because you're using a revolver, when you point that, you're going to need, I'm going to call them dummies. In this case, they look like bullets, but they don't have the gunpowder. So you have the actual bullet. Then this would be a blank. It doesn't have the projectile on the end. This would be a dummy. It's got the projectile and the brass, but has no gunpowder in it. So when you look down into it, you'll be able to see the lead, the projectile. For being realistic, that's what you need. Now, see, I forgot about that. I'm not any professional, but I'd imagine if you're on a set and you turn, the gun goes in front of the camera, and it would have to be a revolver for this time period. The blanks would not look like actual bullets inside a revolver. You'd see the wadding, and you wouldn't be able to see the round leaded projectile that you should be able to see in that chamber, usually a 6-shot chamber. So in that case, I start to think you'd probably have maybe 2 sets of identical guns. One that would have blanks, that would sound and react, make the bang and the pop and the flash, and it would, in that manner, for a gun. And then for the looks, in other cases, when you pass it in front of the camera, you'd have to have one that the bullets that actually look like bullets, but then they're dummies. They don't actually work. Okay, so in order to create these dummies, now, like I said, you'd have 2 different things here. You'd have blanks that react, that pop and sound like a bullet, and then you'd have dummies that look like a bullet but do nothing. They're just show, all show, no go. So I started thinking about this. Now, supposedly here, the prop master was a young girl and not very experienced. Now, I don't know anything about movie sets, but now, what would you use for the dummies? I mean, theoretically, you could use actual live rounds, which seems incredibly dangerous. That would probably be the cheapest, quickest, fastest thing to use, but it would also be the most lethal and dangerous to have actual live rounds around guns on the set. Or you could make dummies. Now, I've done this before, just to get gunpowder when I was younger. We won't get too into that. But you take the bullet, pliers, you pull the projectile, the lead projectile, you work it out of the brass, it comes out, you loosen it up, pour out, there's black powder inside, you pour that out, and then you could put the projectile back in. Now, this would be a dummy. Now, if you wanted to be extra safe, you'd want to, this is called the primer. The primer, it's the pin, the firing pin in the back of the bullet. You'd want to use bullets that had been pre-fired, because then this primer would have already been used. So the primer, the little explosion would be used and not able to work, and there would be no gunpowder, so there'd be no chance that this thing could fire. But if you were cutting corners and you were in a hurry, say if you had to make, I think they're called bandoleros, the straps, or for all those bullets, if you wanted to make one and make all the bullets, 30, 40 bullets, it would be time consuming and tedious to make these dummies, to take the powder out of each one, secure the projectile back in the end, and make sure that they were all shot so the primer was already used up. So if you were in a hurry, you could just use actual bullets that hadn't been fired, so they'd have a live primer in them. Also, if you weren't careful and you were being in a hurry and you didn't dump all the gunpowder out, all the black powder out, and put the projectile back in, there'd still be a chance that there would be enough explosive power inside this dummy to push that projectile out. And that's what I'm thinking could have happened. I totally did not think of the situation where you're actually going to need 2 different fake bullets on a set. You're going to need one, the blanks that pop and sound like a real bullet, and then you're going to need the ones just for show, because a blank does not look like a real bullet. It sounds like a real bullet, but it does not look like a real bullet, and it will not look like an actual bullet if the camera looks down the barrel, you'd be able to tell that it's not a real bullet. For reality, for a true movie, I'd imagine they'd want it to look real. Or the bandoleros, where you have the actual bullets, hanging on the gun belt. Blanks would not look like a real bullet. You'd have to have dummies. And if you weren't very careful and went through this process to make the dummies, make sure all the black powder was out and the primers were used, there would still be a chance that this bullet could fire when that hammer hits. If that casing, that primer has not been used yet, that little explosion will go off. And if there's any amount of black powder still perhaps accidentally left in that casing, it all, I don't know the physics here, the grain of what could force that projectile out and actually go through one woman and into another. But I'm assuming if this was set back in the West in the 1840s, we're talking about big old 44 Magnums, which had a lot of gunpowder. And it's possible that somebody working in the props didn't take all the black powder out and didn't make the dummies correctly, or got the dummies mixed up, the gun that had the dummies in it mixed up with the gun that had the blanks in it. I hope this made sense to you guys. And I'm a layman. I don't know, but this is the one thing that made sense to me, because I forgot about that they'd actually need more than blanks on the set. They'd need dummy rounds that look like bullets but have the black powder hopefully taken out. And if it wasn't done correctly, there could have been enough charge left in there to push the projectile out. Because I just don't see how a blank with the wadding could actually go through one person and into another. So hopefully, this is my own forensic interpretation of what could have happened. Because it's bothered me, and I don't subscribe to conspiracy theories. So this is a rational explanation, especially if you had an inexperienced prop master, or you were on a tight budget, and you just didn't want to take the time and the tedious action of carefully emptying out all the gunpowder and using firing pins that had already been used. Just a thought. All right, you guys have a great Sunday.